Rain tapped against the marble steps of the city's grand corporate tower, each droplet carrying with it the restless pulse of a night that refused to be quiet. The building itself loomed like a monument to power, its glass walls glowing faintly in the storm. At its entrance, where warmth and luxury met the cold, a woman sat slumped against the stone pillar. Her hair clung damp to her face, and her thin coat was no match for the chill. One arm wrapped around a small backpack, its straps frayed, its zipper stubbornly jammed, while the other cushioned her head as though exhaustion had finally defeated her will to stand. Anyone walking by would mistake her for another of the forgotten souls of the city. And perhaps she was. Except tonight, she would not remain invisible. Inside the tower, an elevator door opened with a gentle chime. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his suit tailored to perfection, his eyes carrying the cool detachment of someone who had learned long ago to guard his heart. This was Daniel Hart, CEO of Hart Industries. His reputation was etched in whispers, ruthless in the boardroom, precise in his every move, untouchable. Few people ever glimpsed the man behind the empire. Fewer still would believe he was also a father. A smaller hand clung to his, tugging with the curiosity only a child could dare. His daughter, Lily, no more than 6, skipped alongside him, her tiny rain boots splashing in the shallow puddles. She had her mother's bright eyes, though her mother had been gone for nearly half her life. Daniel never spoke of it, but the absence was a shadow neither of them could escape. "Daddy," Lily's voice piped through the patter of rain. "Look." Daniel followed her gaze to the figure curled on the steps. His jaw tightened, reflexively cold, the way it always did when confronted with the harsh realities he couldn't afford to solve. The city was full of lost faces. He had trained himself to pass them by. Yet Lily's hand slipped free of his grip, and before he could stop her, the little girl had run forward. She crouched beside the woman, brushing the damp strand from her cheek with innocent fingers. "Daddy," Lily whispered, her voice carrying both wonder and sorrow. "Why is she sleeping here?" The words cut through Daniel more sharply than he expected. For a moment, the storm seemed to pause, holding its breath for the answer he did not have. He approached slowly, his polished shoes echoing against the stone, and looked down at the woman. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale, her lips trembling from the cold. "Lily," he said firmly, "come back." But his daughter didn't move. She only looked up at him with eyes too big for her small face, eyes that silently demanded a response. He opened his mouth, searching for a practical, detached explanation, yet none came. Then the woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes clouded with fatigue but startlingly alive with something he couldn't quite name. She blinked at the little girl kneeling beside her, confusion flickering before recognition settled. "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely, her voice fragile from disuse. She tried to sit straighter, clutching her backpack protectively, as though expecting to be driven away. "I didn't mean to be here. I'll move." Lily's hand reached for Hayes instinctively, holding it with a stubborn gentleness only a child could offer. "You look cold," she said softly. Daniel inhaled sharply, the air thick with tension. Around them, passers-by had begun to slow, their curious eyes darting between the suited millionaire, his innocent daughter, and the disheveled woman on the steps. Whispers rippled in the rain. The scene was turning into a stage, and he hated being its reluctant actor. The woman tried to free her hand, murmuring apologies again, but Lily clung tighter. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel Hart found himself unable to walk away. Still, he masked his hesitation with steel. "Lily," he repeated, lower now, "let go." But his daughter's next words stopped him cold. "If Mommy was here," she said simply, "she wouldn't leave her." The rain fell heavier. The woman's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Daniel's jaw clenched, his chest heavy with an old ache he thought buried. He met the stranger's eyes again, and though his instinct screamed to maintain distance, something in her trembling defiance pulled at him. For the first time that night, Daniel Hart, the man who had built walls so high even grief couldn't climb them, hesitated. And in that pause, the woman's backpack slipped slightly open, revealing the corner of a photograph tucked inside. A child's face smiled faintly from the image, half hidden but unmistakably young. Daniel froze. The storm raged on, but the true thunder had just begun. Who is the child in the photo? Why is she here? Why does Lily's innocent question cut so deeply into Daniel's heart? The photograph's corner slipped further into view as the woman clutched her backpack closer, almost panicked that it had been revealed. Daniel's eyes had caught just enough. Small hands clutching a stuffed toy, a little boy's half-smile. It wasn't the picture itself that unsettled him, but the way she guarded it like a lifeline. He knew that look. The whispers from onlookers grew sharper. A man in a trench coat muttered, "Another beggar," latching onto sympathy. A woman tugged her umbrella lower, murmuring, "She shouldn't be sleeping here, not in front of his building." Daniel despised the attention. He had lived his life evading the city's gossip, yet here it was, pressing in like the storm. He should have pulled Lily back, ushered her into the waiting car, and driven home to the quiet security of their estate. He should have done what made sense. But Lily's tiny fingers still held the stranger's hand. The woman finally managed to speak, her voice trembling as much from humiliation as from cold. "Please, don't worry about me. I'll leave right away." She tried to stand, but her legs betrayed her, buckling beneath her weight. She collapsed back against the stone pillar with a muffled gasp. Lily flinched, her small face crumpling with concern. "Daddy, she's sick." Daniel's throat tightened. He forced logic into his tone. "She's not our responsibility." Lily turned toward him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "But she's somebody's." The word struck with unexpected force. Somebody's. Once, long ago, someone had been his responsibility too. A woman with laughter in her eyes who had trusted him to keep her safe, to build a world where their daughter would never know pain. And then she had been gone, ripped away in a hospital room where no wealth or power could bargain for one more breath. He looked down at Lily, who was staring at him as if his answer would define more than this moment. He was torn between the armor of detachment and the piercing innocence of her trust. The woman, sensing the tension, whispered again, "Please, I don't need trouble. Just a little time to rest. I'll go." But her body betrayed her again, this time with a cough that racked her frame, wet and harsh. She tried to muffle it, but the sound carried into the rain. More pedestrians turned to look. A security guard from the tower's entrance began making his way toward them, suspicion already in his stride. Daniel cursed inwardly. This was spiraling out of control. "So," the guard called out, eyeing the woman, "do you want me to remove her?" The woman's face blanched, shame etched into every line. She shrank back, clutching her backpack tighter as if bracing for impact. Lily stepped in front of her. The gesture was so small, so instinctive, and yet so defiant that Daniel's breath caught. His daughter, shielding a stranger from the world. The guard looked between Daniel and the scene, waiting for his order. This was the dilemma. Turn away, preserve his carefully built reputation, teach Lily the cold truth of survival, or intervene and open a door he had spent years bolting shut. He opened his mouth to give the order, and then Lily whispered, "If Mommy were here, she would have helped." The guard's expectant stare, the stranger's murmurs, the storm pressing down, it all blurred. What cut through was that soft, trembling voice, invoking the one person Daniel could never ignore. His late wife's memory hung between them, fragile and undeniable. Daniel looked down at the woman again. She wasn't asking for rescue. She was bracing for rejection, the kind that stripped dignity more than hunger or cold ever could. And somehow, that made it harder. "So," the guard pressed. Daniel inhaled deeply. "No," he said finally, his voice steady. "She stays." The guard blinked, startled. The crowd murmured. The woman's lips parted in disbelief. But Lily smiled, wide and luminous, as though the storm itself had broken. Daniel turned to the woman, his tone clipped, authoritative. "What's your name?" She hesitated, as though her name itself was dangerous to share. "Emily," she whispered. "Emily," he repeated, almost testing it on his tongue. "Can you walk?" Her pride flared in her eyes, though her voice betrayed weakness. "Yes," She tried to rise again, clutching the pillar for support, but faltered. Daniel caught her arm before she could fall. His touch was firm, businesslike, but beneath it was something neither of them named. "Daddy," Lily asked softly, peering up at him. "Can she come with us?" The storm outside felt calmer than the one raging in Daniel's chest. He should have said no. He should have walked away. But instead, he found himself tightening his grip on Emily's arm to steady her. And with that single choice, the carefully ordered life of Daniel Hart began to unravel. Daniel has allowed Emily to stay. But what will happen when her secrets surface? And why does the photograph in her bag matter? The town car waited at the curb, its black exterior gleaming beneath the rain. Daniel helped Lily into the back seat, then turned back to Emily. She hesitated on the steps, dripping, clutching her backpack so tightly her knuckles whitened. The crowd had thinned, but a few eyes still lingered, some pitying, others judgmental. "Get in," Daniel said simply. Her head shook almost imperceptibly. "I can't. You don't know me." His jaw tightened. "You won't last the night out here." "I don't need saving," she whispered, though her trembling frame betrayed her words. Lily's face appeared at the window, fogging the glass with her breath. "Please," she mouthed, her small hands pressing against the pane. That single plea tipped the balance. Emily slid into the car's shadowy interior, keeping her backpack close, her posture rigid as though any moment she might bolt. Daniel joined them, shutting the door with a finality that sealed more than the storm out. The ride was silent but thick with unspoken questions. The city's lights streaked past, neon bleeding through the glass like ghosts of another life. Lily leaned against Daniel's arm, drowsy but watchful, her innocence filling the spaces Emily's silence left hollow. Finally, Daniel spoke, his tone sharp. "Why were you sleeping at my building?" Emily flinched. Her fingers tightened around the back. "It was dry. That's all. You had no way else." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She refused to answer. The car slowed as it turned into the private drive of Hart Manor. Iron gates swung open, and for the first time that night, Emily's mask cracked. Her eyes widened at the sprawling estate, its windows glowing like watchful eyes in the darkness. She pulled her coat tighter, suddenly smaller in the presence of so much wealth. Inside, the warmth enveloped them, marble floors gleaming, chandeliers dripping with crystal, hair now loose around her shoulders, wearing a borrowed sweater far too large for her frame. She looked smaller, more fragile in the morning light, but her eyes, when they met Lily's, held warmth that hadn't been there last night. She was helping slice strawberries, her hands steady despite their worn roughness. Lily giggled. "You cut them like little hearts." Emily smiled faintly, a rare curve of lips. "My son loves them that way." Daniel's chest tightened. There it was again, the shadow of the boy she wouldn't speak of. Lily noticed him first. "Daddy, she's making breakfast with me." He walked in slowly, his presence shifting the air. "I see that." Emily stiffened, lowering her gaze. "I'll repay you for the food," she murmured. His brows furrowed. "That isn't necessary." "It is," she insisted quietly. "I don't want charity." Something in her tone pulled at him, an echo of pride and survival. He understood it more than he cared to admit. Breakfast was a quiet dance. Lily chatted freely about school projects and her favorite fairy tales, while Emily listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made the girl beam. Daniel watched silently, torn between suspicion and a strange sense of ease. The image unsettled him, his daughter's laughter filling the room, a woman's voice weaving warmth into the silence. For a fleeting moment, it felt whole. Afterward, Lily scampered off to the piano room, leaving them alone. The silence that fell between Daniel and Emily was heavier than words. He studied her, noting the fine lines of exhaustion on her face, the stubborn set of her jaw. "You said you'd leave today," he reminded her. Emily's hands tightened around her mug. "And I will." "Where will you go?" Her eyes lifted, sharp, defensive. "That isn't your concern." His voice softened, though his eyes remained steady. "If your son exists, then it is." Anger flickered across her face. "Don't speak of him like he's a rumor. He's real. He's everything." Daniel leaned forward. "Then why hide him?" Her breath caught. For a moment, her mask slipped, and he saw the raw fear beneath. She looked away, staring out the window as though the world outside could swallow her secrets. "Because people take what you love when you can't protect it. I've already lost too much." The quiet admission pierced him. He thought of his late wife, of nights he had sat awake beside Lily's crib, terrified that the world would take her too. He recognized that fear in Emily's eyes. Before he could respond, Lily's voice drifted back from the other room, carrying a melody on hesitant piano keys. It was the same song Daniel's wife had once played, a lullaby that still haunted him. Emily's head tilted, listening. "That's beautiful," she whispered. Daniel swallowed hard. Her mother used to play it. Emily turned to him, her expression softening. "You must miss her." The word struck with surprising gentleness. Few people dared to mention his wife, as though grief were a wound too sacred to touch. Yet Emily's quiet acknowledgement felt less like intrusion and more like understanding. Something shifted between them then. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. Two people bound by loss, sitting across from one another, carrying scars they didn't need to explain. Later, in the garden, Lily tugged Emily outside to show her the late-blooming roses. Daniel followed at a distance, watching as his daughter slipped her small hand into Emily's. They walked together among the flowers, the child chattering, the woman listening with a patience that made Lily glow. For a moment, Daniel let himself imagine it, the three of them framed by morning light, laughter floating like birdsong. It was dangerous, the way hope crept in where logic warned against it. But just as quickly as it bloomed, the moment threatened to unravel. When Lily ran ahead, Emily leaned against the stone wall, her face shadowed. Daniel approached, his voice low. "You're hiding something bigger than a photograph." She met his gaze, pain etched in her eyes. "And you're demanding answers I can't give." "Why?" "Because if I tell you, everything changes." Her words hung in the cool morning air, heavier than the storm had been. Daniel studied her, torn between pressing and pulling back. But before he could choose, Lily's laughter rang out again, breaking the tension. Emily forced a smile for the child's sake, but when her eyes met Daniel's one last time, they carried a silent plea. "Don't push me." "Not yet." And though it went against every instinct he had, Daniel let the truth remain hidden, for now. Emily and Daniel share a fragile moment of connection, but her secrets loom larger than ever. Will the truth about Noah destroy this fragile peace, or bind them closer? The following evening, the house was quiet except for the soft rhythm of rain returning against the windows. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, a book still open on her chest. Daniel carried her upstairs, tucked her beneath the blankets, and lingered for a moment, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She murmured in her sleep, and for once, he allowed himself the peace of simply watching her breathe. When he came back down, Emily was standing in the study. She had not turned on the lights. Only the fire cast its glow, painting shadows across her face. Her backpack rested on the desk, unzipped, the photograph of the boy in plain sight. Her eyes met his, steady this time, though rimmed with the red of sleepless nights. "I need to tell you the truth," she said softly. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but calm. "About Noah." She nodded. "Is my son. He's 6, just like Lily, and is the reason I was there, outside your building." He waited, silent, giving her the space she seemed to need. Emily's fingers traced the photo, lingering at the boy's smile. "We had a home. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Until I lost my job, and the bills piled up. His father," she paused, bitterness flashing in her eyes. "He left long before that. Said we weren't worth the weight of responsibility. I tried to keep Noah safe, tried to shield him from everything collapsing around us. But when the rent was gone, when I couldn't even buy his medicine for the fever he caught last winter," her voice broke. She swallowed hard. "I had no choice but to send him to stay with a friend in another part of the city, just until I could stand again, just until I could give him what he deserved." Daniel's chest tightened. He saw in her not weakness but a ferocity born of love, a mother clawing against the world for her child. "He doesn't know?" Daniel asked gently. Her lips trembled. "He thinks I'm working, that I'll come for him soon. And I will." But that night, her eyes closed briefly. "I had nowhere left to go. I sat there because it was the only place with light, the only place I didn't feel invisible. And then your daughter." Her voice caught again, softer this time. "She saw me." The fire crackled, filling the silence that followed. Daniel studied her, weighed down by the weight of her confession. He thought of his own grief, his own nights of hollow despair after losing his wife. He thought of Lily, who had only known fragments of a mother's love before it was stolen. And he thought of Noah, a boy whose face he had never seen except in a faded photograph, waiting for the woman who would do anything to come back for him. "You can't do this alone," Daniel said at last. Emily shook her head, fiercely protective. "I don't want pity. I don't want to be someone's charity project." His voice softened, the steel stripped away. "And I'm not offering charity. I'm offering partnership. For your son. For Lily. For us." Her breath hitched, eyes widening. "Why? You don't even know me." Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "Because my daughter saw something in you I couldn't. Because you remind me what it means to fight for someone you love. And because," he paused, searching for words he hadn't spoken in years, "because I don't want Lily to grow up believing kindness ends where convenience begins." Emily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She wanted to argue, to shield herself with pride, but exhaustion and truth had stripped her bare. Her voice cracked with vulnerability. "If I say yes, everything changes." Daniel's reply was simple. "Then let it change." The firelight flickered between them, casting shadows that seemed to retreat as if giving way to something new. Weeks later, the house was louder, fuller. Lily's laughter rang alongside another child's, Noah's, whose wide-eyed wonder at the manor was matched only by his delight in finding a playmate who accepted him instantly. Emily moved through the halls with more certainty now, though she still carried her quiet humility. She had found work with Daniel's foundation, helping families who had been where she once stood. Each day, she rebuilt not just her life, but her belief that broken things could be mended. Daniel, watching from the doorway one evening as Lily and Noah built towers of blocks in the living room, felt something stir deep within him. It wasn't just gratitude. It wasn't just admiration. It was the slow, undeniable awakening of a heart that had been closed too long. Emily caught his gaze across the room, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. Years later, when Lily would tell the story of how Emily first came into their lives, she would always begin with the same words. "Daddy, why is she sleeping here?" And Daniel would remember that night, not as the night his carefully guarded life unraveled, but as the night it truly began again. The firelight glowed against their joined silhouettes, a family born not of chance, but of choice.